You're sitting in your car, engine still running, and there's a strange kind of silence hanging in the air. Not the peaceful kind, the kind that makes you aware of every small movement you make. The officer walks back, holds out the ticket, and says something that sounds harmless. Just sign here. That's it. No explanation, no pressure. Just a simple instruction that most people follow instantly. But let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself. When you sign that ticket, do you actually know what you're agreeing to? Or are you just trying to end the situation as fast as possible? Drop your answer in the comments, because what you believe about that signature is exactly where most drivers make a quiet mistake. One that doesn't feel serious in the moment, but can come back later in ways they didn't expect. Stay with me, because there's one short sentence. Simple, calm, and completely non-confrontational. That can protect you more than you think. Almost nobody uses it, and that's exactly why it matters. Now here's where things start to get interesting. Most people think the traffic stop is basically over when the ticket comes out. In reality, that's not the end. That's the transition. Everything before that point was observation. Everything after that point becomes documentation. And once something becomes documentation, it moves forward without you being there to explain it. Think about that for a second. While you were driving, the officer noticed your speed, your lane position, how you reacted to the lights. When you pulled over, they noticed how quickly you stopped, whether you hesitated, whether your movements were calm or rushed. Even your tone when you first spoke, it all adds up. None of this is emotional. It's procedural. But here's the part most drivers miss. By the time you're being asked to sign, a version of that entire interaction has already been written down. And once you sign, you're stepping into a system that runs on what's written, not on what you meant. Let me give you a realistic scenario. A driver gets pulled over late at night. They're tired, slightly distracted, maybe just a little over the speed limit. The officer is calm, no aggression, no tension. The driver just wants to go home. So when the ticket comes, they don't even read it properly. They sign exactly where they're told, done, they leave. But later, when they actually look at the ticket, something feels off. The violation seems more serious than expected. Maybe there's wording they didn't catch. Maybe there's a note or code they don't understand. Now they're confused. But here's the issue. That moment to ask, to clarify, to understand, it's gone. Now everything is being handled by a system that doesn't pause for explanations. And this is where small misunderstandings turn into bigger problems. Now, let's clear something up, because this part matters. Signing a ticket is not automatically admitting guilt. In most cases, it's simply acknowledging that you received the citation and that you'll deal with it later. But the danger isn't the signature itself. The danger is signing without awareness. Because when you don't understand what you're signing, you lose the chance to correct or clarify anything right there on the spot. And that's the only place where things are still flexible. After that, everything becomes fixed. Now, some people think the solution is to refuse to sign. That's not smart. Refusing can escalate the situation quickly. It can make things unnecessarily complicated, and in some cases, it can even lead to additional issues right there on the roadside. So this isn't about resisting. It's about staying in control. Calm, simple, controlled awareness. And this is where that one sentence comes in, the one almost nobody uses. Right before you sign, you say, "Just to confirm, this isn't an admission of guilt, correct?" That's it. No attitude, no challenge, no argument, just clarity. Now you might be thinking, does that really matter? Yes, it does. And not in the way most people expect. That sentence doesn't magically erase the ticket. It doesn't change the violation. What it does is something much more important. It shows that you understand what's happening. You're not blindly complying. You're consciously participating. And that changes how the interaction feels on both sides. From the officer's perspective, you're calm, aware, and controlled. You're not being difficult. You're not resisting. You're simply making sure you understand. And that kind of behavior stands out. Not negatively, predictably. And predictability reduces tension. Now, let's go a bit deeper into something most drivers never think about. The system that handles tickets later doesn't know your intentions. It doesn't know that you were tired, confused, or just trying to get home. It only knows what exists on paper. So, if there's ever a misunderstanding, it doesn't get corrected automatically. It gets processed. And once something is processed, fixing it becomes harder, slower, and more complicated. That's why this 1 second matters so much, because it's the last moment where you're still part of a conversation. After that, you're part of a process, and processes don't ask questions, they follow records. Now, imagine two drivers in the exact same situation. Same violation, same officer, same outcome. But one driver signs instantly without thinking. The other pauses for just 1 second and asks that simple question. Just to confirm, this isn't an admission of guilt, correct? That second driver isn't changing the ticket, but they are changing something else. They're changing their awareness. They're making sure they understand the situation before stepping forward, and that alone puts them in a stronger position later, if anything needs to be addressed. Because now there's no confusion. Now here's something even more important. And this is where people really start to see the difference. Important moments rarely feel important when they're happening. They feel routine. That's why they get ignored. That's why people rush through them. That's why small decisions get made without thinking. But later, those same moments suddenly matter. And by then, it's too late to go back. So the goal here isn't to be paranoid. It's not to challenge everything. It's not to turn a simple stop into a complicated situation. The goal is much simpler than that. Stay present. Understand what's happening before you act. Take control of the small moments that most people overlook. Because those small moments are where control either stays with you or quietly slips away. And once you start seeing it that way, everything changes. You don't rush anymore. You don't react automatically. You don't treat the interaction like something to escape from as quickly as possible. You treat it like something to move through carefully and intelligently. And that's what keeps simple situations from turning into complicated ones later. Because in the end, it's not the ticket that creates problems for most people. It's the second they didn't think mattered, right before they signed their name.